I want to leave a message this morning about our crazy mixed up justice system and some of the things that have transpired over the last just 24 hours and more. Um, because if you are fighting charges or you have been convicted, as I have been falsely, or even if you have not been convicted falsely, and you're on probation, you will be told repeatedly what a piece of garbage you are and how you have to reform and how you, even if you, even if you pled not guilty as I did, they will tell you you're guilty and then they will make you go through evaluations and psychiatric treatments and then of course when those come back indicating that you're not what they said, then of course they spin it a different way and have you take a different test, or they still continue to assault your psyche on all this nonsense. And you know what's really funny is that the people who have the power very often are the criminals. Very often are the ones that have misbehaved. Very often the ones that have committed crimes far and above anything that you may have created. So if you're listening to this and you're saying, I feel awful for what I've done, don't, because it happened. It's in the past. You have to move forward with it. At the same time, you can seek justice. Certainly, you should, speak out if you've been unfairly attacked, as I have been. Um, but it's very, very important for you to understand some of the facts that this system is not made for justice. As one judge famously said, it is a plea bargain system. It's designed to grind you down. It is a system that decides victims and perpetrators, and sometimes they're the opposite of what they appear to be. So I want to point out a couple of things, case in point. So in Virginia here, for example, we have in the last session, which is last year, 2024, passed a law which allows people who have been driving drunk to be able to get their licenses back. And the argument behind that is not a public safety argument where we have to, keep things the way they are, where we're restricting these licenses. No, no, we have to give them back pretty much unrestricted. And the, the idea is people need to make a living for their families. At the same time, we make a public safety argument about people who should be on the registry because we make up a story apparently that a little old lady was assaulted, and therefore we have to go back 30, 40, 50 years to when somebody was convicted of a sex offense, which could have been for anything. We don't know. And that person now we have to, even though they have no other convictions or anything, we need to put them on a registry. That's what they tried to do last year. And the argument was public safety. Okay. So, no public safety concerns for people to drive around habitually drunk, but certainly to go after somebody who hasn't committed a crime in 40 years. Add that to the latest nonsense, which HB 1991 is supposed to create, and that would create a new registry. They call it a database, but it's a registry for people who commit domestic and sexual violence, sexual battery, etc. Sounds like a good idea. Well, first of all, forgetting what the cost might be, the registry costs millions of dollars to set up and hundreds of thousands to maintain every single year. And the only thing it does is bring in money to the prison industrial complex and keeps that bloated pig system alive. Remember, Virginia incarcerates more than the top 10 industrialized nations in the world. Again, people argue with me, but they never bring any facts out there. Okay, except for John in VA, who is very deceptive with his. Okay, but if you go look at the Prison Policy Institute, which is among several groups studying this issue, uh, it's very clear that Virginia tries to incarcerate itself out of problems. As I think Delegate Marcus Simon said a number of years ago, that caused me to laugh when I was watching the hearing. He says Virginia has never found a problem that it couldn't solve with a new felony. So here we have a situation where this new database that's supposed to uh, gain, keep tabs on domestic violent people and domestic abuse cases would kick in at the second or third offense, not the first offense. Sex offender registry is the first offense. Okay. And you'll really love this, those of you who are interested in public safety who are watching out there. And I'm speaking to the trolls and the others who think that they know what's going on just because if they feel something, it's got to be right. Um, that the sex offender registry would put you in a position where, at the lowest tier where I am, you're on this stupid list for 15 years. But if you're on the domestic violence one, where you have a real victim versus the sex offender registry, where it could be a setup and a sting, where there's actually no person that you ever touched or that you ever went after, you get 15 years on the registry, but you can petition to be off of the domestic violence and sexual abuse registry after 7 years. Okay, so effectively a 7 year registry. There is no off ramp at the sex offender registry. Tier 1, you have to be on for a minimum of 15 years. Tier 2, 25 years. And Tier 3, what used to be known as the sexually violent predator, until they downgraded that because they realized people were not always sexually violent predators. That's, you're on it for life. So you're on it for life. There's no way to get off of it. So we are to believe that somebody who is a repeat domestic violence abuser, which somebody uses violence and sex to get their way in a relationship, uh, that is 7 years you can get off. But somebody who failed 25 years ago to report abuse of a child because they weren't aware of all the factors of it and they wanted to get their acts together before they went to the police, that's life. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. Absolutely no sense. You have people like um, Dr. Kilpatrick, who is a physics professor I've mentioned on here, who is in prison for 35 plus years for having sexually explicit conversations, apparently, okay? Apparently, with somebody he thought was 24, who then said they were 14, and they weren't 14. And when he questioned them on it, they said, oh no, that was a typo. And you can see how that would be, but the typo cost him the rest of his days. You have people who are in prison for having sex with children who had 10 or 15 years. And you have people who are in prison for 12 years. And you have people like Caitlin Grimley who had actual sex with prepubescent boys who get off scot-free and are able to do some kind of restorative justice nonsense. Okay, I say nonsense because I've gone after these people and talked to the restorative justice people, and they're not really very clear on what that would mean. But basically, she had to sacrifice a year and a little bit of humiliation to keep her license and to be able to go to some jurisdiction that would hire her and be able to continue her work as a math teacher, even though she actually had sex with children versus the rest who did not. Now, you may say, well, Norm, the registry here that has to do with sex offenders, why that deals with children, and this other one deals with no, it's not called the Child Sex Offender Registry. It's called the Sex Offender Registry, which encapsulates all the enumerated sex offenses, which is all of them, by the way, versus this domestic violence bit, HB 1991 in the House, and it has a companion in the Senate. And it has been, its patron, its chief patron is Delegate Lovejoy, who should know better because we spoke to him last year about this. And of course, he puts forward this ridiculous bill, and it turns everything upside down. So it is possible it will pass, and if you are a domestic abuser, you can get off of it in 7 years. If you talk to a fictitious child and it didn't disengage when you learned a child, even though there was no sex talk and there was no pictures, um, that is 15 years on the registry, okay, or more. All right. It's patently ridiculous. And you want to add some more ridiculousness to it. You want to say that justice is blind, and you want to continue this nonsense about how neither, favor nor fear will we fail to pursue these cases, blah, blah, blah. Well, of course, Donald Trump and the Trumpettes were just elevated to power, and all the 1,600 people who busted into the Capitol Rotunda and its environs just got pardoned, and they actually committed a crime. All right. So, if we're going to put everything on par, and we're going to say that talking to a fictitious child who you originally thought was an adult because they said they were an adult is worthy of 35 years in prison, 5 years, 10 years, whatever the hell it is, then you can't let these people off. You can't claim that domestic violence abusers should get no more than 7 years, even when the American Law Institute says that nobody should be on any kind of sex offender registry for more than 5 years. They've done the studies. They've looked at all the evidence. They've looked at the nonpartisan analysis by experts who study this, who looked at the data, and they said nobody should be on for more than 5 years. And then you add to that the ridiculous situation where you have a not too cozy, not too uncozy relationship between prosecutors and judges. There was a LinkedIn ad that I received just yesterday, but I received it late. Last Thursday, January 16th, 2025, the um, General District Court, GDC, and the Juvenile Domestic Relations Court, JDR, judges met with at happy hour, by the way, across from the courthouse. There is the Fairfax County Courthouse. You can look it up. There's an Irish pub across the street, and they met there for a nice little happy hour. So imagine if you would, that there's business before the court, and you are a judge, and you have this was for the young up and coming attorneys and others who are newly to the Bar Association in Fairfax, and you get together and chum it up with the judges. Well, obviously, you have a relationship with them. So take somebody like me or somebody else. They have no relationship with these people. They go to the court for an honest decision, an impartial decision. You're going to tell me that that judge puts all that relationship with the attorneys who are before him, who are going against you, and they put all that aside. They don't even think about that. Somehow they can compartmentalize it, and that's not going to be a consideration if they have to split hairs. They're going to say, I trust him. Besides, I drink with him, and that should work. That should work and satisfy me, and therefore I'm going to rule against you, Joe Citizen. And don't tell me that doesn't happen because I've seen it happen. I've gone into courts well before anything ever happened here, and seen the judge greet the prosecuting attorney, greet the guardian ad litem, greet others. How are you? How are you? Oh, how are you? How's your mother? How's this? How's that? And it's like, hi to you. Okay, so don't tell me that you're not a stranger or a foreigner in a foreign land because you are, even though it's your system that's supposed to serve you. You are the stranger. And no stranger yet is all the ridiculousness that we see out there with the police who, according to the Washington Post article, use their badges to abuse many, mostly girls who are preteen, between 13, 15, and boys and others who are um, in positions where they're trusting law enforcement, where they needed law enforcement's guidance, where they're simply doing their job in an academy in which law enforcement was present, and they were instead abused repeatedly. And many times, law enforcement was allowed to resign without consequence, put on probation for doing substantively worse things than any of the prior examples I used in this video involving sexual violence or sexual congress or sexual anything. Okay? Or they were allowed to resign and then they were rehired in a jurisdiction far away. There's no database for them very often, or it's a scattershot thing. They have one here in Virginia and they have decertified some police, but we don't really know how much and how far that's gone. Okay. When Senator McPike was stumping for votes over the summer, he mentioned that to me when I mentioned these other points. And I said, yeah, so what? They also have a police civilian advisory board, and this board uh, is supposed to empower the citizenry, but most of the citizens don't even know it exists. It's only in 9 jurisdictions around the Commonwealth, and they can rewrite the rules pretty much as they want. But the police were very, very busy 2 years ago trying to get a cop on there who's retired, require anybody who serves on the civilian board to drive around with the cop for so many hours. So they could just chit chat and see how police work really is. But of course, the cop could get inside their head and talk about how, well, you need to understand we have a very difficult job. Yes, yes, all that's true. But remember, we're not serving the cops are serving us. So the only question is, are they behaving properly? Are they following the Constitution? Are they engaging in questionable tactics? Okay, that's what you would do if you were on the civilian review board. But of course, they'll stack this with toadies and cronies and people who are not interested in being impartial but have already made up their mind. So as I round this video out, in this topsy-turvy so-called legal system. Remember, it's not fair. It's not designed to be fair. It's not designed to be impartial. It's not designed to be correct. It's not even designed to, really serve the public. It's designed to serve the institution itself and not much more, and give a veneer of justice. That's not to say it doesn't hit a home run every so often. It doesn't mean sometimes it doesn't put the baddies away. It does mean that it hurts a lot of people along the way while it claims that it's doing the good of the public. So this is Norman Michaelation on the 22nd day of January 2025. You have a good day.